John 5:4. But we also talked about Surah 2:222. Each of us has to explain the history of our text. I believe that Christians can very clearly and very honestly explain the history of their text. But here I have something else that I brought. This is the top copy manuscript of the Quran. This is one of the most ancient editions of the Uthmanic Quran. However, and this is produced within the past few years. This was produced in Turkey. It was produced by Islamic scholars. May I point out something to you? These are charts of textual variants between the major codices of the Quran. Produced by Muslim scholars. Verifiable by looking at the high-quality images of the Quran itself. Now, here's the question. If John 5:4 means the Bible is corrupt, then those charts mean the Quran is corrupt, right? If we use the same standard, yes? Now, when someone looks at John chapter 5, verse 4, I can look to my critical edition of the Greek New Testament, and I can look up the manuscripts that contain it and do not contain it. I think very clearly it was a marginal note explaining what the actual text was saying, because the angel coming down and stirring the waters, that was then included in a later manuscript, because thankfully Christian scribes tend to be very conservative. They found something in the margin, they included it. That's a good thing. That means we haven't lost any of the originals. But what can I do with the Quran? There is no critical edition of the Quran. There are Muslim scholars who'd like to see it in the West, but there is no critical edition of the Quran. Our Muslim friends here this evening who have an Arabic Quran in their possession have a 1924 Egyptian printing. Who made that the standard? There are differences between it and other printings. Why shouldn't we take Ibn Masud? Why shouldn't we take Ubay ibn Ka'b? Ubay ibn Ka'b had a different number of surahs. Ibn Masud had different readings. Why do we not take them? You can't go to the Islamic sources and do the kind of textual study that you can do with the New Testament. And I say to you, that's vitally important in the evaluation of the truth claims of Christianity and Islam. The fact that I have 5,761 catalog manuscripts of the New Testament, averaging 200 pages each for 1.3 million pages of handwritten text, not including the translations into Coptic, Bohairic, Latin, and other languages, allows me to recognize textual variation and to examine it and find the original amongst the variants. It's still there. But when you burn the sources you use to create the Uthmanic Codex, you destroy that possibility. And so I simply ask my Muslim friends, think about that. Why don't you hear your Muslim scholars talking about that? They should be. If they were applying the same standards, especially in their apologetics, to their own texts, that they're applying to the Bible. Inconsistency is the sign of a failed argument. Who uses the same standards? Even the Quran says, have just weights, have just standards. We need to do that this evening as well. Has the Bible been corrupted? No, God has preserved it for us. He's done it in a way that wasn't like the Muslims believe the Quran was preserved by just one version protected by the sword. He did it by having those manuscripts go all over the known world via persecution, so that no one man or group of men could ever change those words. Insert doctrines, take doctrines out. It could never have happened. We've seen that from the evidence this evening. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Dr. White. Sheikh Awal, you now have 7 minutes.
All right. Well, Dr. White just mentioned that the Quran, the last word as he mentioned, that the Quran was championed by ways of, persecution. That definitely did not happen. We have so many intellectuals, men who have studied the Quran from different points of view. They have come to conclusion as to the Quran. Among other things, I've given you the words of George Ben Ashok, who wrote in his book, the genuine Islam, he said, and then Thomas Carlyle in his book Heroes and Hero Worship, he said, the lies and the zeal that have been heaped upon the man Muhammad, it is a disgrace to us alone, that a human being, a man single-handedly in the desert will wield a sword with his right hand and the Quran on his left hand, subduing man to accept this Quran is one of the biggest lies the West have ever perpetuated on the man Muhammad. And he said this is the most misinformed and misunderstood religion in the West. That the early missionaries have did a wonderful job by portraying the Quran and Muhammad as something that is being forced upon mankind today. And he again went on to ask, well, if that is the case today, Islam is one of the fastest growing religions in the world. People from different quarters are accepting Islam despite the fact that it's going through all this, a lot of things have been said about Islam. And that is one of the miracles, and that is one of the power of Allah that eventually, which Dr. also know, Allah said, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. He is Allah who sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth to supersede each and every religion. Now, Quran, the reason why you don't find so many manuscripts here and there like the Bible, you have to dig ground, find here in the cave, this and that, is because the Quran happened, it came in a full-blown history. We know where Muhammad was born, we know how long he lived in this earth, we know when he died, we know who collected the Quran, we know who do everything. But in the case of Jesus, we don't have clear-cut information. Today, if you go to Jerusalem, you find different different groups of religion. Each one and everyone is claiming this is where he was born, this is where the nativity took place. We don't have all these facts, so people depend on artifacts here and there. But Muhammad actually was, the Quran came in a full-blown history. So we know everything is being preserved, like I said, preserved in the memory of the Muslims. And Sayyidina Usman did not actually burn the Quran or the Qurans. They standardized the Quran in such that each and every one of the Muslims in future will follow one rendition of the Quran. So therefore all the variant reading were burned. Like I said, in Islam, to burn the Quranic ayah is accepted, because we cannot throw it away. You have to burn it, or you have to give the ground and put it there. So now definitely there is no question that the Quran indeed is the word of Allah, and that it has been established, according to my understanding, that the Bible have been changed many, many times, and that each and every Bible have its own ways of dealing things, and then we have different kind of religious groups in the Christendom. Each one of them have their own Bible. It's clear evidence. Many, many groups. The most ancient manuscript that you have is in contradiction with the books that we have today. Some books were taken out, some books were taken in, some were rejected, some were accepted. Now in 1 Corinthians 13:9, it says, Paul speaking, for we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. Here you can see clearly Paul is talking about the imperfection of what they have. When that which is perfect comes, it will deal away with all that we have. So we know definitely this is the Quran, and Muhammad have come and he established the Quran. We have the Quran today. There is no contradiction in the Quran. But today we know the Bible has so many contradictions. Different books have also cited a revised version, which gave contradiction to the King James version. And the King James version is mostly accepted by most of the Christians, but yet we have other books telling us that it is not right, that they have so many contradictions in the Quran. Yes, the Bible really didn't give us anything. What Dr. Paul just mentioned is just anything that you can say to defend yourself. You could say whatever you want. You could say anything that you want. But to me, absolutely, the Bible definitely have been changed. And the changing is keep going on and on and on and on. In Pakistan, for example, in part of the Pakistan, for example, when the Muslims begin to point that when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you, they begin to change their Bible, they make it she, so that the people will not say that, Muhammad is a she. So now this is how their Bible is looking like. And the Bible is continually changing, it's being changed all the time. So there is no evidence that the Bible have been collected. And the way it has been collected, over 40,000, like he said, over 40 different writers wrote the Bible from different parts of the world. But the Quran was given by one single human being. In 23 years, one single person brought the Quran. That is why Michael H. had also supported that notion, that a book written by one single human being, which is the Quran, in his book, the 100 most influential men in history, he placed the Quran to be number one. And he placed Muhammad to be number one. And he said, the reason why I give my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, number 3, is because Paul is the one that brings